Good evening and welcome to Truth or Politics. Happy Valentine's Day. This evening we have a very, very special program. Our normally scheduled program we're going to reschedule and we will get that out next week. Tonight we have some very, very special guests. This show should knock your socks off. Whatever you're doing, stop doing it, and please pay attention to this show because next you may be the next victim. Tonight we have Jim Fowler, who is the head and owner of Litigation Alliance. He is also the founder of GlobalNet. He is the founder of the organization that I'm also a co-founder of, U.S. Justice Watch. And also to my left, we have Harvey Meadows, an investigator with U.S. Justice Watch. And our star tonight on the show is Karen Sypher. She is a former model, former spokesperson, and she's also a mother of 5. And I'm your host, Darlene Price, who's on every week as your hostess, and also I am a co-founder of U.S. Justice Watch as well. Tonight I'm going to switch roles on you guys. Normally you used to see me interview everybody on the panel, but tonight I'm going to switch roles. We have an off-camera interviewer, Mr. Peter Ferrara, who is a former columnist, a writer, a published writer, and also an author, and he's going and a good interviewer, and he's going to do the interviewing tonight. So from there, we will start off with our interview. I'm going to turn this over to Peter now.
All right. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who and what U.S. Justice Watch is so that we begin kind of knowing who we're talking to.
Well, U.S. Justice Watch was, again, founded by Jim Fowler and I, and I'll turn the mic over. We have my microphone here. Turn the microphone over to him for a minute. Myself, most of you guys know out there, I was a whistleblower. I was a federal agent for many years and a whistleblower, and as a result of that, the retaliation that I went through, and many, many, many whistleblowers, almost all whistleblowers go through when they dare to speak truth to power and uncover waste, fraud, abuse, and corruption in the government. That's what happens. And so Jim also went through something similar, and we founded U.S. Justice Watch, an organization that takes one case at a time. We take cases that involve public corruption or waste, fraud, or abuse of some type of government corruption, and we take those cases and we file suit, or in this case it's a criminal case. We represent individuals who are being wrongly convicted, wrongly tried, and we fight back for people's civil rights.
Good deal. Jim, why don't you tell us how you and Darlene first got involved in this case?
Well, I got a call from a civil rights leader in Louisville, Kentucky. He contacted me and apparently he'd heard of a couple of the cases that I had before where there was some manifest injustices taking place. I actually was really hesitant to get involved in this case because this is some of the elite in Louisville that are behind the prosecution on this. I didn't know anything about basketball in Louisville. I didn't know anything about Rick Pitino. I'm not a sports nut. There are some things I watch, but basketball wasn't one of them. I was up there on a trial and I met Karen. And Karen is Karen Sypher. She's her married name is her divorced married name is Karen Sypher. I met with her the first night. She had just come home from a hospital procedure. She's in a pretty bad state. I met with her family. And immediately I started to sense something that was terribly egregious with the prosecution in this case. And then after actually meeting with her counsel, who was still her lawyer at the time, Jim Earhart, I realized that there was some really serious problems. In his office, he admitted to me, for instance, that he knew that the tape recordings used at Karen's trial against her were probably not legit, and he said he was going to send them out to be tested. Problem is, this is after trial. This should have been done long before trial. So spent a little time with the family, found out what kind of people they were. I realized that there was something desperately wrong with the whole situation. I contacted Darlene. Darlene and I have talked about different cases along the way, and she said, absolutely, count me in, and here we are.
Okay. So you are here obviously convinced of your client's innocence and also convinced that she's not getting a fair shake, she's not getting, there's really no justice going on. There may be a lot of law going on, but there's not a whole lot of justice going on. what are you and Darlene and whoever else you have working, I mean, how are you framing this case? How do you propose to respond to what your client is defending herself against?
First off, I got to give credit where credit's due. Dwayne Meyer, who's sitting somewhere in here, is a part of my team, our team. Dave Nolan is the main attorney in this case. He's in Washington, D.C. He couldn't be here tonight, but I talked to him several times today about what he wanted said, what he didn't want us to say. We're pretty much all on the same page anyway. Peter, in answer to your question, the first thing that came to mind was when we started looking at the evidence, we kind of split it up amongst us because it took us a while. Karen's attorney, even after he was out of the case, had refused to turn over the files. I mean, Karen wrote a letter to the judge. We had a little problem getting Dave in the case. The judge had apparently done some calling to the Bar Association up in Washington, D.C., which caused a delay. But the attorney, Earhart, refused to give the files over. Once we got them, there was 3.5, 4 boxes of materials, I guess. We split it up amongst the 7 of us. And right away, it wasn't just, well, maybe this will help or maybe that'll help. It was like, oh my God, how could this be going on? A good example is, as everybody knows, Karen was charged with alleging that she was raped by Rick Pitino. And the government was able to twist that and turn that around and make it look like she made it up. And everybody wants to ask the question, why did she wait so long to come forward with it? I mean, the rape actually happened in the early 2000s, and it wasn't reported until much later. And when we got into the files, the case files, we found out quickly why that was. Why did that take place is what we kept asking ourselves. We didn't confer with Karen. We wanted to find our own answers. We wanted to find our own problems with the case. And we found a psychological report where one of Karen's attorneys, that we'll talk about some false documents in a minute over, one of her attorneys sent her to a psychiatrist in Indiana, out of the area, and tried to convince the psychiatrist to come up with a false finding that Karen was making it up or she had some kind of psychotic problem. What the psychologist did is broke it down and answered a lot of those questions. First off, he said that even sitting here tonight, I might add, is very dangerous for her emotionally because, what is it? I think, Darlene, 4 out of 5 women report a rape, and the reason is because they're so traumatically affected.
Don't report a rape.
Or don't, I'm sorry, don't report a rape. Yes, I apologize. And the other 4 of those out of the 5 sit on it because they don't want their life traumatized. In Karen's case, the psychiatrist came up with the conclusion that her lawyer was wrong. This is her lawyer, Clay. T. Clay. He was wrong, number 1. And the psychiatrist found out from all the tests that he administered to Karen and everything else that she was heavily manipulated by some very, very big schemers. And I think the words he used is there's the appearance at least of an elegant scheme where Tim Sypher, her ex-husband, was set up to inveigle his way into her life to do damage control. And what Tim Sypher managed to do is hold Karen at bay for about 5 years.
And Tim Sypher, it's important to note, works for Rick Pitino. He owes his whole livelihood, everything to Rick Pitino. And Tim Sypher, if you look at his background and experience, he does not have the education or experience to be the head of the Yum Center, like the former head of the Yum Center was. I mean, the education.
Pardon my ignorance, what is the Yum Center, just so I know?
The Yum Center is, it's called the KFC Yum Center. This is the huge sports center in Louisville, Kentucky, and this is what this case is really all about. Let me tell you what this case is really all about. This is a multi-million-dollar sports center that they wrapped around the good name of Rick Pitino. Now, this all comes on the heels of when she finally decides to report this rape because it's just too much for her. We're going to let her talk to that in just a minute. This comes at a time when they just are finishing this Yum Center and getting ready to open it. For example, just the naming rights to have your name on the Yum Center, KFC Yum Center, was $13.5 million. Now let's keep in mind what happened to Tiger Woods not too long ago. And with the allegation that basically that, you know, Tiger Woods was, you know, basically just a hoe, okay? Now, can you imagine what that would have done? Look at what the millions of dollars down the drain because of the revelations about Tiger Woods and the accusations, okay? Can you imagine what it would have been had she actually had some credibility that there was a rape involved here. Can you imagine the KFC Yum Center, people referring to it as, you know, Rick's Rape Center instead? Okay, you're talking millions and millions of dollars. All these people, everybody that took the stand in this case had something to gain, had an angle. They worked for Rick Pitino. They were invested in this. And that's what this case is really all about, to protect the corporate interest. They had to shut up what is virtually, basically a whistleblower. And Jim and I have a whole lot of experience in whistleblowers.
To add to that, Peter, to give you a dollar amount, the Yum Center is a $500 million investment just to start with by the community there. And the other problem with this is, and I want to read a few of these things out of this report. I'm going to read the part out of this report that's public. It's already in the record of the court. And I can't give you everything in it, but this is the psychiatrist. This is his finding after an exam.
And the psychiatrist too, it's important to note that this is one of the foremost respected psychiatrists in the United States. This is a guy who teaches, this is a guy who's been published. This guy, his background and experience is the creme de la creme of psychiatrists. And let me say, he's a psychiatrist, an MD, not just a psychologist. There's a big difference in those.
Okay, some of the things that jump out at you about this is, his statements are, and this is he talks about his reservations in the entirety of it, but based on the interview with Ms. Sypher, my review of my notes and construction of this report, she was raped twice by Rick Pitino. The sex was non-consensual. I believe that she has been manipulated. There's the appearance, at least, of an elegant scheme where Tim Sypher was set up to inveigle his way into her life to do damage control. His behavior has numerous inconsistencies. At the risk of terribly upsetting my client, one of the things that I'm going to discuss here is, I want to tell you a little bit about what was done in her family situation to quiet her down. There were abortions in this matter, and they were coerced. In the psychiatrist's report, he goes in to explain how much in fear Karen really was and really is. He goes on to explain that when her 5-year-old daughter now, who has been severely abused along the way, including burned with cigarettes and everything else, that the courts just keep hushing that up. They took custody of all these kids away from her. Even the United States probation officer told me in her office, personally, face to face, that there was no reason in the world to justify doing that, that Karen is a very good mother. And I'm here to tell you, if you met her kids, they don't get any better than her kids. We saw a situation, and it's in this report, where Karen had to actually get permission from Tim Sypher to have this child. That permission was handed down from Rick Pitino. From the evidence that we have in the record, that's in our records, that the court is refusing to look at, and which would be borne out in an evidentiary hearing, that the court has refused to hold, it would be borne out that Rick Pitino's intentions were to be able to keep control of Karen by another child. And the idiocy of all of this is, Pitino doesn't even deny having sex with Karen. He doesn't. He doesn't deny that that child that was aborted was probably his. Based on just the financial numbers alone, had she had the child support alone would have been far more than this concocted scheme that they're claiming she came up with to extort money. She would have been paid an enormous sum every year. Pitino's money, his revenue would have paid her something like $100,000 every couple months. This is ridiculous, what they've broken this down to.
See, you got to understand, the government's whole case is a concocted conspiracy that she's the Lex Luthor of Louisville, okay? This woman, all-powerful, somehow managed to force an attorney to testify against her, an attorney to commit this alleged extortion, which we have the documents to show that he was the real extorter, if there even was an extortion, okay? The whole trial, the evidence keys really on 2 witnesses. Attorney Coulter, which she went to as her divorce attorney, who found out about this rape, and Attorney Coulter, who, at the time she goes to him and says, he finds out it was Rick Pitino, who's about to file bankruptcy. He's about to lose everything. Why? Because he's a scumbag, lech attorney who we've got evidence of, that he has email evidence and all kinds of evidence that he films his clients who come into his office, female